From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Ticats This Week with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker.
Hey Ticats fans, welcome to Ticats This Week. I'm RJ Broadhead along with Luke Tasker, all set to call the final home game of the season. Luke, soak that in for a second. Where has the season gone? This is it. The final home game, the final game at Tim Hortons Field in 2022 for the Tiger Cats. Can you believe it?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it. It zoomed by, and now you gotta win 4 games on the road after this home game. That's the goal, and it's a long ways to go to get there, but starts this Friday night.
Yeah, you're right about the 4 road games, but there won't be a game at Tim Hortons Field because we know the final game's in Ottawa, and then they'll have to go on the road and play either Montreal, Toronto in the East Semi and the other one in the East Final, and then off to Saskatchewan for the Grey Cup. So that's the Tiger Cats schedule for the rest of the season, we hope. 6-0 record for the Tiger Cats, 12 points. They're currently in a playoff spot, but they need a minimum of 1 win combined with a Saskatchewan loss. First time winning back-to-back games all season. They've won 3 of 4 games against West Division opponents, Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Calgary, coming off their first road win of the season, taking on Ottawa, needing that victory to possibly clinch a playoff spot. This has to be a real high for the Tiger Cats, maybe their biggest high of the season.
Yep, and I think you could also probably put in there after that win against Winnipeg, that kind of changed the course of the year, but they've got to be feeling pretty good right now. I mean, they've been able to string some success together finally, and they're kind of past some of the early question marks of the season that, were off to such a slow start, and lots of things you could point your finger at, and they've corrected a lot of that, and they're in a position to make the playoffs all on their own without needing anybody else. And like you said, even if they split with Ottawa. So long as Saskatchewan splits with their Calgary series, it's a playoff berth. And yeah, there's times in the last couple of months people wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah, it's crazy how this season has really gone. I'm going to throw a few numbers at you from this Calgary game. So the Tiger Cats had 2 fourth quarter turnovers. They only had 15 first downs compared to Calgary's 28. Those 28 first downs are tied for the most Hamilton's allowed this season. The other time they did it was against Winnipeg. They won both those games. Rushing yards. Calgary had 183. That's a season high allowed by Hamilton. 3 times the Tiger Cats have allowed 100 yards rushing. They've won 2 of those games and lost to Edmonton, and probably should have won that game too. Net offense was Hamilton's lowest in 4 games, but Calgary had 421 yards. That's the second most net offense Tiger Cats have allowed. 3 times they've allowed 400 yards or more net offense. They've won 2 of those games and lost to Montreal by 1 point. Time of possession. Hamilton, lowest of the season, just barely over 22 minutes. Calgary had the ball for about 2.5 quarters, 37 minutes and 53 seconds, and still the Tiger Cats won. When you look at statistics like that, and overwhelming with net yards and rushing yards and first downs, Calgary feel like Tiger Cats have in a lot of the games where they were the better team for most of it, but could not get the victory. How do you explain that win for the Tiger Cats?
Yeah, I've just heard a quote, something like facts are a real problem, but statistics can be manipulated, right? Like, if you break that game into 2 different games, the first half and the second half, well, it's funny because the Ticats would have won that first half game with almost no offense. And all of those yards and first downs that Calgary came, they ended in turnovers. So if you drive 100 yards and then turn the ball over on the goal line, well, you do get 100 yards of net offense, but for no production. And that's kind of the story of Calgary's first half. It's funny that, and then that second half, to finish that point, Hamilton did string some together, and interestingly, they turned the ball over in the second half. And so they came out of the game +1 in the turnover ratio, but it was a story of two different halves in kind of each of those statistical categories that you mentioned. And I think that's kind of the most interesting story to me, is that they really found a way to do it, overcoming their own mistakes. And that's not like, early in the season when you and I were getting ready for that Edmonton game. Edmonton was struggling, and so was Hamilton, to be fair. But it was sort of like, they're going to win this one. Don't worry about it. They're going to win this one. Well, and they didn't do it that week. Well, going into Calgary you're not thinking that. You're saying you got to play a perfect game to go to McMahon Stadium and win this. And they didn't do that either, meaning play the perfect game. Somehow they just gutted out a win. And we've talked about that last drive and the big return, and Dane Evans with, back-to-back beautiful throws. I mean, it's pretty fantastic, and I think that those guys can be proud of doing that. It kind of leads you naturally to the question, although, it's football. You're never going to play perfect or have no mistakes, but it leads you to that question of, what could you do if you don't turn the ball over, if you do get some first downs in the first half, if you stop them earlier in those drives in the first half? Well, that'd be great to see, and I don't think that this will be a mistake-free game, but if they can polish up a few of those things against Ottawa at home, I think you can expect good things.
Well, Luke, we know this Friday is the last home game of the regular season. It's also Fan Appreciation Night. Enter the stadium by 6:30. You could win great pricing throughout the game, including game-worn Hammer jerseys, autographed McManus and Flutie jerseys. You'll have a shot at 2023 Grey Cup Festival package that includes a pair of tickets to the Grey Cup game at Tim Hortons Field. You can win prizes from the Ticats' great partners like Baffin, Pizza, Pioneer, Tim Hortons, Buffalo Wild Wings, Moxie's, Dempster's, and more. Tiger Cats and Redblacks this Friday at the Maid and the Hammer game as it returns to Tim Hortons Field. Good to see the Maid and the Hammer jerseys back. That'll be hopefully their first victory in those jerseys, but so much going on at this final home game of the season, and a win could clinch a playoff spot. It'll be interesting how it all plays out, because Tiger Cats' first game of the week on Friday, 7 o'clock kickoff. You can listen on the Ticats Audio Network. If you can go to the game, you should go to the game. You just heard all the great prizes you could win if you get there by 6:30, but it's Ottawa, a team they beat by 2 points. And it wasn't an easy game. They had the game-winning touchdown with 19 seconds to go. They trailed by 5 points at one point in the fourth quarter. Lewis Ward had a chance to win the game with a 54-yard field goal, and I don't know, it was a couple of feet short. But it was really one of those games, 2 0-4 teams coming in at the time, and Tiger Cats won it, but very easily could have lost it. So these two games are going to be tough.
Yeah, and it's like, you can draw any triangle in the league in the CFL. It seems like every year. And you think, well, Hamilton beat Ottawa in their match, and it was a close but good game. Ottawa has struggled. Well, Ottawa has beaten Montreal. Like, they've played Montreal very well, and Hamilton struggled in the last effort against Montreal. And so there's, of course, every team could say that about Hamilton and Winnipeg too, which is interesting. Say, everybody's lost a game to Winnipeg almost, but if they beat Hamilton, blah blah blah, sort of a useless go around when you think it through that way. But Ottawa is in no way a bad football team. If they're going to make the postseason, it'll kind of be, I don't want to say miraculous, something less than miraculous, but pretty unlikely, and it kind of takes the stars aligning for them, but. For the controllable factors in their court, just meaning to sweep the series, it's just 2 games winning against the Ticats, who they were very close with, who they're well matched against. I mean, we're going to have a good football game on Friday, and it's the best, and it's near playoffs when both teams, their life depends on it, and you could reasonably argue that either way. Of course, Hamilton could potentially get in. Even losing this game, but still, yes. They want to solidify their future here.
Yeah, Ottawa's situation is they have to win their final 2 games. They're both against the Tiger Cats, so that means the Tiger Cats won't get any more points, and they need the Riders to lose their final 2 games. Not impossible, but the Tiger Cats can take care of business. Pretty interesting to go back and look at that game, 5th game of the season for the Tiger Cats, their first win of the season. Lawrence Woods had that 88-yard punt return, and he fell inside the 5-yard line. He probably would have loved to have had that one back as he just ran out of steam. It was one of 3 fourth quarters that Hamilton won all season long. And by the way, all three of those fourth quarters that they won are victories. Tiger Cats had 5 turnovers, but they only allowed, let's put that into air quotes, only allowed 7 points off those 5 turnovers, and they were able to get 8 points off takeaways from the Redblacks. So they were able to earn more points off of turnovers, even though they allowed more turnovers. And when you win a game by 2 points, that could be the deciding factor.
Absolutely. That fourth quarter stat is really interesting. And even in this last Calgary game, which was the most unique of Hamilton wins of the year, I'd say, it was just a really bizarre football game. They still didn't win the second half and were able to come out ahead at the end. But, in the games where they have put together those impressive fourth quarter drives, you certainly think of the Winnipeg game and Saskatchewan, this last Saskatchewan game, those were the most dominating efforts. If the Ticats can start quick, but then also eat up that fourth quarter at the end of this game at home, I think that's got to be key for them to do that. And, you don't want, Jalen Acklin and those guys being able to make those big time plays late in the game. I remember games in my career where it was very back and forth. When that opposing team just eats up the clock, you kind of had the feeling like you were going to do it, like you guys were going to win, and then you just run out of time. You don't get enough opportunities to make it happen, and that's a very frustrating way to lose. But good teams are able to do that and able to just kill the clock in that fourth. And though the Ticats have not done it very frequently, like you said, 3 fourth quarters won all year. Like the rest of the stats, like the rest of the team, they're moving in the right direction with a lot of that stuff. It'd be great to see a fourth quarter win at home.
You brought up Jalen Acklin in the first game against Ottawa, their first drive. He gets a touchdown. It was welcome back to Hamilton, Jalen Acklin. And it's kind of disappointing that he won't play. He is injured. Masoli's injured. Those are 2 guys that, were pretty important to the Tiger Cats last season. And in a game that means so much for Ottawa, they'd love to be a part of it, but won't be able to. However, there will be a few former Tiger Cats on the Redblacks. Lorenzo Malden, he's the sacks leader. Darius Sirocco. Jackson Bennett is listed as the number 1 running back for the Redblacks. So there is some Tiger Cat content. But when I look at their offense, Ottawa's offense, Luke, Nate Bahar's out, Jalen Acklin's out, Jackson Bennett, their number 1 running back. This defense for the Tiger Cats has been very, very good lately over the last few games. A real key to the victories. Is Ottawa deep enough when you just look at it on paper to be able to get points off this Tiger Cats defense?
So coming off this Calgary game, and they went into that game the best running offense in the league, and they had a lot of success on the ground. Micah Johnson missing from that lineup last week in Calgary, it was noticeable. And with him back in the lineup this week and against a team that's struggling with those injuries, I would expect that they're going to be able to get back to that Hamilton defense, run game defense prowess that we've seen throughout the rest of the season. And when you do that, it comes down to how well that line can protect in the pass game, and then the quarterback and wide receivers and their connection, their ability to have time to make plays. You do have the Hamilton, starting 5 secondary in the game lined up, and that was questionable going into the game, but that's where the depth chart stands now, is they're all there and ready to go. And so I kind of expect the defense, honestly, to have a great game. And they did have a great game in that first half of Calgary, but mainly in that turnover ratio. They let up a lot of first downs still and some yards, but they stole the ball away. I kind of think we're going to see them get back to that, top of the league in 2-and-outs, opponent 2-and-outs forced, and get the ball more frequently into their offense hands, which is what really was part of the struggle in the first half in Calgary.
Yeah, Richard Leonard, you talk about the turnovers. He has 3 interceptions in his last 2 games. Deontay Evans is playing. He's going to start for the Tiger Cats after that injury. You and I both cringed when we saw a replay of that ankle injury. Are you surprised he's playing? I am.
Yeah, and it's just so nuanced. Like, it's hard to tell exactly Well, obviously how bad it was in the severity of it, but you're so right. You see that, turn away that you don't think it's supposed to turn, and it did not look great. They had to take time and get him off the field and all of that, but for him to be back, and I mean, first of all, it's a toughness thing for Ciante Evans, and it's impressive to see him out there, but at the same time, it doesn't do anybody any good to go out there and limp around. I mean, I assume that he feels and that the team feels like he's ready to make plays at the level that he can. And so, you can kind of just count your blessings and consider it a good thing that maybe that wasn't as severe as it kind of appeared to, because you're right. I wouldn't have been surprised if that would have been, a few games at least missed for Ciante.
So coming off that big win against Calgary, first time winning in Calgary since 2004, first road win of the season. So Hamilton's carrying some momentum in. It was a late night for Tiger Cats fans watching or hopefully listening on the Ticats Audio Network to the game. Late night for us, Luke. Where did you stay after the game?
RJ, the finest hotel in the Hamilton area, the Sandman on Centennial. And Ticat fans, be sure to listen for the Sandman Hotel code words during the game this Friday night. For Sandman Hotels Listen to Win contest, enter ticats.ca/Sandman for your chance to win 2 free nights at any Sandman hotel in Canada. Great Ticat partner and Ticats Audio Network sponsor. It's really, they do a good job there. It's a nice place.
Yeah, we can vouch for it. We've stayed there. Great hotel, and it's friendly. Close to the stadium. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Very friendly. That's what you want in a hotel. Don Jackson, he's back in at running back for the Tiger Cats. Wes Hill's on the injured list. We kind of know Don Jackson. He's a competitor. He's been sitting on the sidelines waiting for this opportunity. I have a gut feeling he's going to have a fantastic game. What do you think?
Well, it'd be great to see. He at the start of the year was the guy that was getting the carries. I mean, he was the go-to guy, and we saw him rotating with Sean Thomas Erlington the way that now Wes Hills has been. I think one of the biggest things with Wes Hills is is the difference that he made in the pass game as well. And so, that's Don Jackson's got that work cut out for him. And what we've seen him, especially, you think back to last year and some of the explosive runs that he made. And like you said, you do get a sense of that competitiveness. And so, and truly it's a competitive industry, and there are fewer jobs than there are players who can fit into those roles. And so this is, on a personal level, this is a really great opportunity this night, this Friday night home game, for Don Jackson, just to see, just to make a claim for himself as to what he could do in years to come and weeks to come as they enter the playoffs. I think we'll see Don Jackson at his absolute best. And like I said, part of that best has to be in the pass protection as well as his run effort.
Couple of positions I want to talk about, or categories I want to talk about, because they usually don't get talked about unless there's negatives. And the offensive line compared to the defensive line. Now, for the offensive line, 4th straight game where they've allowed no more than 1 quarterback sack. So the offensive line has done a great job at protecting and opening up run lanes for the running back. And the defense was able to get 2 quarterback sacks on Calgary. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but coming in, Calgary had only allowed 13 quarterback sacks all season. So in the 2 games against Hamilton, Hamilton's earned 20% of the quarterback sacks that Calgary has allowed. So the defense is getting to the quarterback, and the offensive line is protecting the quarterback. And when you can do those 2 things, you're going to win a lot of football games, aren't you?
That's ask Coach Sal about it. That is where the game starts, right there. And it's on blocking and tackling and up front, and that defensive rush and the ability to stop the rush and to protect for the pass. That's the game. And the Ticats, in all of those categories, both sacks for and sacks against, struggled early this season. And yes, they had numerous injuries on both sides of that and mix-ups at positions and things like that, but they have corrected some of that, and especially that offensive line sticks out as just having they've been a really, really impressive part of this 3 out of 4 game winning stretch here that the Ticats are on. And of course, it kind of timed up interestingly, with Wes Hills and his sort of appearance into the offensive lineup. And so they've got to make that, Don Jackson has to kind of find his place in both that protection and in their run game this week to keep that success going. And no doubt, kind of in a sense, that 3 and 4 game stretch, the increase in production from the offensive line, Wes Hills also timed up with kind of Dane Evans coming out of that bye week and playing really well, that Winnipeg game. And so it's been a really cohesive offensive unit. And I don't expect anything different at all. I sincerely don't. I just think Don Jackson, hopefully he gets the ball in his hands quick. He kind of gets into the game and is feeling it and is able to kind of plug and play there.
The other category is kicking. Seth Small, his first game of the regular season was against Ottawa. He's coming off another 4 for 4. He's hit 13 in a row, has only 3 misses all season, leads the CFL in field goal percentage. He has the longest field goal at 58 yards. He chipped in a 57-yarder, against Calgary, and he had 4 field goals against Calgary, 1 in every quarter, which is a little bit interesting statistically. But Seth Small, as a 22-year-old rookie coming in, you have to earn the confidence, and he really has. He's been as good, if not the best kicker in the CFL this season.
And you think about the position for kickers, very similar to quarterbacks, except for there are much fewer backup positions. There are some, and there are practice squad kickers, but there are much fewer than quarterbacks. But the similarity is that there is only a handful of jobs across North America for that. And they're coveted positions, and there are plenty of really good kickers who do not have a place to kick right now, meaning a club to call home. Seth Small started this year not being the guy, and he getting bounced around and with an unknown future, and then he comes in and solidifies that spot for himself, and does so in a really, really impressive way. Seems like he's a guy who kind of is a net positive in the locker room. I would say he kind of just adds more value, with everything that he does. And you can kind of see when he makes those kicks, RJ, I love that we get you can kind of follow the reactions on the sidelines. He seems to me like he's got guys rooting for him on his own team. And yeah, like everybody cheers on their kicker when they make a kick, but it's different for some guys. He seems like a very liked guy around the facilities. You hear Coach O talk about him in just sort of a way that, you kind of get a sense that he's very pleased that he's in the locker room and he's the guy. And I'll tell you, his college pedigree, making those big kicks, and he comes here, and it seems like maybe Seth Small is a guy who heats up when the season gets real, in the later months of football, and he might be just coming into his best. And that 57-yarder kind of left no doubt, 4 straight in the Calgary game, and on that 13 straight run. I mean, it seems like the pressure doesn't weigh him down. Maybe it's helping him come into his absolute best.
Yeah, it's fun to watch when the kicker's on his half of the field and able to kick field goals. So yeah. It's pretty crazy.
Good point. Yeah.
So Ticats fans, enter for a chance to win 4 tickets to Sunday's Forge FC semifinal match at Tim Hortons Field, plus a pre-match meet and greet with Ticats players. Go to ticats.ca/Forge contest to enter. You could win 4 club-level tickets to Sunday's match and an exclusive meet and greet with Tunde Adeleke, Malik Carney, Mason Bennett, and Lawrence Woods III. Contest closes at midnight Friday. Go to ticats.ca/Forge contest to enter now. Luke, when is midnight Friday?
Classic riddle.
Yes, tough
in my
question,
opinion,
isn't it?
I think so. Technically, of course, that would be Thursday night, Friday morning. I think that midnight Friday means Friday night to the lay person, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay,
so on New Year's Eve, when you're doing the countdown to kiss your lovely bride, are you going to 12:01 or are you going right at 12 when the day turns?
Well, the day starts on the dot, 12. Good one, RJ. I like that.
Yeah, it is a bit tricky. To clarify, it will be 11:59 Friday will be the cutoff for that contest. So I got clarification from our our guru, our executive producer, Peter McEwen, and he knows all, and he's very smart with those things. But just to make it simple, 11:59. When it hits 11:59, you have 60 seconds to enter the contest. So
on Friday night.
On Friday night, exactly. So ticats.ca/forge contest to enter. You'll get to meet some great Tiger Cats, and maybe they'll be coming off a fantastic game on Friday. So Tiger Cats need at least one win and a Saskatchewan loss, and they could clinch a playoff spot by the weekend. It's extremely exciting. Kind of interesting because BC plays Edmonton Friday after the Hamilton game, which means it's before the Calgary-Saskatchewan game, which means if BC wins in Edmonton, which they should, they'll clinch second spot in the West Division, rendering the last two games for Calgary meaningless against Saskatchewan and extremely meaningful for the Rough Riders. So it'll be Tiger Cats can handle their own business with victories, but if they're relying on the Rough Riders, I think with that scenario, they have to throw that equation out the window because the Rough Riders have to be desperate, even though they aren't starting Cody Fajardo on Saturday's game. So they're going to go with Mason Fine at quarterback, which from what I read, the Riders fans are a bit split. But as far as the Tiger Cats, what's the mindset going into these final two games? Are you thinking, hey, we may only need to win one? Or are you thinking we got to win both? Or are you just saying, hey, take it game by game?
Well, to me, BC, Calgary, Sask, those teams, and Ottawa, of course, those teams are the ones thinking through scenarios. You know, they've got to watch the Hamilton game closely. They've got to then take care of business on their own. Hamilton does not need to do that this weekend. They got to just win this game, and they can let the dust settle on Monday or Sunday after all the CFL games are done, and then they can kind of take a fresh look at things, and they may be in a position where the last game doesn't matter, but you're certainly not worrying about that right now. You can hope all you want come Saturday, and if you've taken care of business on Friday, then start getting into the math problems of it, like what you've already laid out for listeners here. But as a Ticat fan, you don't need to. You know, specifically Calgary, you know, they're the ones in the position of as they're prepping for their game, they're also being very mindful of what's going to happen in the BC game, right? And so that because they will probably change some lineup things, which would be late, you know, a day 3, day 4, but it'll be late, but they'll probably make some changes, I would imagine, if their playoff scenario is set in stone after the BC game.
Yeah. So going into this game, Friday, 7:00 at home, final home game of the season for the Tiger Cats against Ottawa. What's your gut feeling? What are you looking for in the game for the Tiger Cats to be successful?
Well, a couple things lagged in Calgary, although they came out with a win. But a couple things lagged uncharacteristically, and that was, you know, the first downs, opponent first downs and yardage. Micah Johnson back. I'm excited to see him in there and to see some really great defensive production on opponent first down yardage. You know, really putting Ottawa in a difficult second down scenario. Calgary had a favorable second down yardage for much of the game in Calgary, and it's easier to eat the clock up and keep your drives going. So to see that defensive run stop, especially early on, that would be great. And then my eyes are on Dane. You know, this is as close to playoffs as we can get, and your last plays on the field there were unbelievable in Calgary. Different game days and days later, but if you can sort of take that energy into this home game against Ottawa, when your fate is in your hands, if we can see Dane at his best, it'll be a fun and Ticat friendly night. 6-10
record, a chance to make the playoffs with a win and a Saskatchewan loss. By Saturday, the Tiger Cats could be in the playoffs. Was there a point at any time this season, Luke, where you thought the playoffs were unlikely?
Unlikely? Well, even then, you know, we saw the rest of the East struggling. I was going to say 0-4, you know, when, you know, they lost the Edmonton and then the the Edmonton game that went to 0-4, I believe. That was a little bit, you know, head scratching. You know, we didn't expect that, and we were getting deeper into the season without a win. but I never doubted that they would have a chance at it right now. It's just the CFL is this way, and it's a beautiful thing. And now, to have 2 games left and all the cards in their own hands, that's pretty impressive too. But you got to remember we were saying that at 4 games left, they've just taken care of business as this last month of football went on. So they're doing it. They're not falling into this position anymore. You could say that the East everyone in the East was just falling into being in playoff contention, and that was maybe true for the first half of the season. Yeah. The Ticats are owning it now, and they are doing this themselves and doing it their way. And they can continue that against Ottawa.
Tiger Cats are playing their best football of the season. They've won 3 of 4, coming off their first road win, coming off their first back-to-back wins, trying to make it 3 in a row. Could be playoffs. We could be talking playoffs on Ticats this week, next week. That'll be exciting, Luke. This is a big game Friday. Can't wait to see you.
All right, RJ. Looking forward to it.
Kickoff at 7 o'clock. The Tiger Cats and Redblacks, final home game of the season for the Tiger Cats. Hope you can make it to Tim Hortons Field. If not, we'll have the game for you. Pre-game at 6 o'clock with Bubba and Andy, and then Luke and I'll have the call at 7 o'clock.
It's been another busy week for your Hamilton Tiger Cats. Luke Tasker and RJ Broadhead have covered it all, and now we would like to hear from you. Email us anytime at gameday@ticats.ca. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.